Okay, let's call this meeting to order. Good evening and welcome to the hybrid in-person and virtual meeting of the Committee of Adjustment for the Township of Central Frontenac. For those who are new to joining us this evening, my name is Lynn Clegus and I am Chair of the committee. Also joining us are committee members Dan Meeks, Bill Everett, Nikki Gowdy, Susan Irwin, and Bill McDonald. We are also joined by Township Planning staff Abby McKinnon and Jenny Capusta online, as well as Chris Nelson, who will be assisting us as the meeting host. This evening's meeting will follow the agenda that has been posted online. Staff have prepared a presentation for each application, which will be displayed on the screen during the meeting. For each application, we will follow this format. I, as the chair, will introduce the agenda item. Number 2, the planner will provide an overview of the application. Number 3, the applicant or their agent will then have an opportunity to speak. 4, committee members may then ask questions of staff, the applicant, or their agent. 5, members of the public will then have an opportunity to ask questions or provide comments. Anyone wishing to speak is encouraged to do so at that time. 6, the committee will then deliberate and vote on the application. 7, voting will take place by a show of hands for those attending in person or by verbal confirmation for those attending virtually. 8, I will then announce the result of the vote. All members of the public are welcome to provide comments on new applications. Please note that as of January 1st, 2023, only persons specified in the Planning Act are permitted to appeal consent and minor variance applications. Following the meeting, Township staff will provide a copy of the committee's decision to the applicant and to anyone who is requested to be notified within the time period prescribed by the Planning Act. Should you have any questions after the meeting, please reach out to the Township staff. The applicant, the minister, or any prescribed public body with an interest in the matter may appeal the committee's decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal within 20 days of the date of decision or notice. Appeals must be submitted through the e-file portal. Details regarding the e-file system will be provided in the notice of decision. I will now ask Chris Nelson to provide an overview of how members participating virtually can take part in the meeting.
Thank you, Chair. Once the meeting is open to the public, the Chair will ask if anyone has any questions or comments. Members of the public attending virtually are asked to use the raise hand feature at the bottom of their screen to indicate they wish to speak. Staff will notify the Chair and unmute your microphone. Notification will appear once your microphone has been unmuted. Please allow a brief moment after unmuting your microphone before speaking. If you're calling in by phone, please dial *9 when you would like to raise your hand during the meeting. You will hear a prompt on the phone that you have raised your hand and you will be notified when your microphone has been unmuted. This afternoon, it looks as though we have 2 members of the public with us online and 1 in person.
In the unlikely event that connection issues arise and the meeting cannot be restored within 15 minutes, the meeting will be postponed. Staff will contact each applicant and a notice will be posted on the Township's social media. I would also like to note that committee member Philip Smith has also joined us. Okay. Approval of the agenda. Agenda of May 12th, moved by Dan Meeks, seconded by Susan Irwin, that the agenda of May 12, 2026 be adopted as amended to recognize the documentation read from applicant 5A.
And I also just wanted to make a note on the agenda here. There is an application for deferral of 5A, and only members who participated in the original discussion will be able to participate and vote on that deferred application. So we have record keeping that will reflect that for the record, and we just wanted to note that for transparency.
Thank you. All in favor of the agenda? Carried. Disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof. Does anybody have anything they'd like to declare? Seeing none, that's noted. Approval of minutes. Minutes of April 14th, 2026. Moved by Dan Meeks, seconded by Nikki Gowdy, that the minutes of April 14th, 2026 be adopted as presented. Are there any amendments?
I do not have any amendments, as long as the committee is okay with them.
Okay. Can I call the vote? All in favor? Thank you. Carried. Deferred items. APPN 2025-0018 Bankoski. Introduce.
Yeah, Jenny to present.
Can I pass it over to Jenny to present the details of this application?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wasn't sure if you were ready for my presentation, so I didn't want to jump in there. This is an application that was deferred last year. The applicant had come in to get permission to expand an existing legal non-complying structure. The proposal involved reconstructing and enlarging an uncovered and unenclosed deck, which is attached to the house, as you can see shown in the sketch on the screen. The rebuilt total deck area is 168 square meters, or just over 550 square feet, which is an increase of 29.7 square meters, or 320 square feet. So on the screen here, you can see there's part of the deck that is not shaded and part that is shaded in red. So it is the 10-foot by 32-foot area shown at the bottom of the image on the screen. That is the part that is looking for approval through this process. At the time when this was initially proposed, the water body setback was indicated to be 27 meters, or about 88 feet from the high water mark of Sharbot Lake. So during the discussion and review of the committee at that time, it was noted that the deck was actually already constructed, and there was some questions and concerns related to the proper extent and setbacks of the deck. So the decision of the committee at that time was to defer the application until the applicant could complete a survey sketch that outlined the actual dimensions and location of both the deck and the cottage. As you can see in the image here on the screen, that sketch has now been received and did confirm the shape of the cottage and the shape of the deck as were proposed. However, it was determined that there was a slightly lesser setback of 23.6 meters, or 77 feet, so just about a 10-foot difference in the as-built as compared to the proposed. There's no other changes. It's still just the added portion that is being proposed to be permission to expand through this. The rest of it was an existing structure that had several renovations and reconstructions, but that was an existing structure. So as you can see, we have that sketch here on the screen. Just waiting for it. All right. So here on the next slide is an image of that deck and area from between the house and the water. So you can see it is the image that is along the front, or the part of the deck along the front to the left of the stairs. That is the area proposed for approval as permission to expand. And here on this next slide is just another angle. Again, you can see it does comply with the sketch as shown. There is the added stairs located in front of the doors. So based on this, it was confirmed that as built is the existing and the expanded. As I will show on the next slide, one of the concerns raised by the public at the initial meeting was that the proposal was to add another 10-foot by 32-foot section on top of what was already built and shown in this picture. That is not the case. The as-built shown in this picture in the previous slide are the extent of the deck proposed through this, with just the portion that extends out towards the water from the house being proposed for that permission to expand. Conservation Authority, Mississippi Valley Conservation, did review the application. They did a site visit and noted at that time that the deck was in the as-built, so their comments do reflect the situation as shown in those images. And they noted that the slope on the property does not meet the criteria for an erosion hazard and have no concerns with approval of this application as submitted. There's no need for a septic review as there's no increase in living space and the construction is not near the existing septic system. As I noted, there were comments received in 2025 at the initial public meeting for this application. Again, with the concerns that the deck had already been built and are they further enlarging it. As I've confirmed, that is not the case. The as-built is the extent of the proposal. There was another question with regards to whether the committee can add a condition to prevent deck being enclosed in the future. The answer is under the Planning Act, you cannot add a condition that limits that, as anybody has an ability to apply for a permission or minor variance at any point. So even if that condition was included, the applicant would be able to apply if they wanted to put a roof over or do any other alterations at any point in the future. So I would not recommend looking at including any condition like that as part of an approval should that happen today. Based on all these things, planning staff are recommending today that you do approve this application as submitted, with the deck in the as-built situation, subject to the conditions shown in the planning report. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. At this time, I will ask if the applicant or their agent would like an opportunity to speak, and I believe Chris is. Is there anybody online?
Please use the raise hand feature if you'd like to speak. Not seeing anyone.
Thank you. Okay, committee members, do you have any questions for this application? Seeing none, we'll move on. Members of the public have an opportunity to ask questions. Is there anybody online that would like an opportunity to speak?
Please use the raise hand feature if you'd like to speak. I'm not seeing anyone.
Okay. Again, I'll come back to the committee members. Anything further you want to cover before we vote? Okay. All in favor? Just read that. Yeah. Then we can call it. Okay. Moved by Nikki Gowdy, seconded by Bill Everett, that the committee receive the newly submitted survey sketch requested at the August 12th, 2025 meeting of the Committee of Adjustment for information, and that the committee recognize the dimension change of the water body setback for the deck from 27 meters or 88.6 feet to 23.6 meters or 77.4 feet. And further, that minor variance application APPN-2025-0018 Bankowski for concession 4, part lot 10, geographic township of Oso, 1120B Warrington Lane, Township of Central Frontenac, be approved to allow for the construction of a 29.7 square meter or 320 square feet portion of a deck. And that the effect of the application is to grant permission to expand under Section 45(2) of the Planning Act, and further, that the Secretary Treasurer shall issue the notice of decision in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act, including providing the notice of decision to the applicant. Any person or public body that has made a written request to be notified, and any other person or public body prescribed. I will call for a recorded vote for the deferral application. So Dan Meeks, you want your microphone on?
Yes.
Phil Smith,
Yes.
Nikki Gowdy,
Yes.
Bill Everett,
Yes.
and that's carried.
Yep.
Carried. They weren't present, so they cannot vote. Sorry. Okay, moving right along, applications for consent. Are there any applications, Abby?
No, there are not.
Applications for minor variance. APPN 2026-0008 Kilpatrick Knowles. I'll pass it over to Jenny to present the details.
Sorry, Jenny, I just think your mic might be muted there.
Oh, thank you. Sorry about that. I pushed the button. It just didn't work. The K technology. All right, I'll start again. Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is an application again for permission to expand for a property located part lot 19, concession 4 in the geographic township of Hinchinbrook, municipally known as 1133 Simmons Lane. So you can see here on the screen, this is a property that has frontage on Simmons Lane and Elbow Lake. The proposal is to reconstruct and enlarge an existing non-complying garage. So here on the image, you can see the existing garage, which is shaded in red. It has a area of just under 38 square meters, or about 400 square feet, and a minimum water body setback of approximately 26 meters, or about 85 feet. The proposal is to demolish this garage and reconstruct and enlarge it to the gray shaded area here that's outlined with kind of a yellow dash, trying to really define the differences for the committee to help understand. The proposed enlarged structure will have an area of 84.8 square meters, or about 912 square feet, and a minimum water body setback as shown here of 72 feet, or 21.9 meters. This will increase the total accessory lot coverage from a 3.55% currently to 5.35%. So on lots within 60 meters of the high water mark of a water body, the maximum permitted lot coverage for all accessory structures is 2%. So based on the existing situation, and that involves both this garage and some other structures that were noted during the site visit, which I'll talk about more shortly. The garage is not only less than the required 30 meters from the shoreline, but the total accessory lot coverage is already over that 2% that would be permitted through the bylaw. So the permission to expand is both for a further reduction in water body setback and a further increase in total accessory lot coverage. So as I was saying, shown on this sketch is the garage and the existing cottage. However, during the site visit, it was noted that, and I should switch to the next page, there were a number of other accessory structures within the water body setback. The reason this is important is because the accessory lot coverage for a property is calculated on all of the structures and a combined total footprint. So it did slightly change the application. Rather than going from under accessory lot coverage to over, they were already over, and so there was a slight change in review, and that's why this was originally considered for the previous meeting to this, but was deferred until this one to allow for proper review of these structures. So you can see this property also has a floating dock, a viewing deck along the shoreline, a viewing deck with a gazebo over it, set back from that approximately 6.8 meters from the shoreline, and they also have a dry boathouse. So as I noted, those structures combined footprint along with the existing garage puts the lot coverage about 3.5% currently. So while We are looking at approval potentially of even more accessory lot coverage. That additional square footage is set farther back from the water, and will be well screened both by the existing cottage and shoreline vegetation and trees that exist on the property. And I have some photos in the next few slides to give the committee better understanding of the context of the property. Like that. All right. So here in this slide, you can see there are some limitations. The existing garage is quite tight to the existing septic system with the tanks on the one side and the septic or leaching bed at the rear of the structure. So there is limited opportunity to really expand the structure in a way that would take it outside that 30-meter setback or really reduce it in any other way. And that wouldn't impact the accessory lot coverage. So you can see here, this image is as you drive into the property, you have the cottage, which is the gray structure at the rear, and the lower level brown structure in the foreground is the garage that's being proposed to be expanded. Then you can also see the septic bed here. Behind that is a parking area, and then you're pretty much at the rear of the property where it enters from Simmons Lane. So one of the considerations when looking at that was impacts on neighboring properties. Here in this next image, you can see there is an existing cottage that is in proximity to the garage and the cottage on this property, subject to this application. As part of that reflection of that proximity, the proposed enlarged garage will have the primary openings and car access directed to the driveway, which is on the opposite side of this structure with relation to that neighboring cottage. So it will be a larger structure, but there's going to be no loss of overlook or privacy. There's no real openings that are going to face that house. They will see a slightly larger structure than compared to what's now, but it won't increase any traffic or activity in the direction of that neighboring property. So this much. Again, here, this is the side of the structure that will, if approved, have the garage door openings and vehicle access. As a committee can see, there's very limited existing vegetation, absent a few trees that are in proximity to the structure, with most of the area being manicured lawn or septic system or very little leaf coverage, sort of as you can see in this picture here. Again, I'm just gonna let it switch. Again, so this is kind of standing in front of the cottage, looking back towards Simmons Lane on the property. One of the concerns was, again, here you can see the septic tank lids at the left-hand side of this picture, and then immediately behind there is the septic leaching bed, and then you have the driveway access on the right hand of this picture, which then you're almost up to the property line. So it is a fairly constrained area. And as such, the setbacks to that septic system are going to be confirmed at the time of building permit to ensure compliance with the location and setbacks as required under Ontario Building Code. So this application was circulated for review to Rideau Valley Conservation Authority. Their comments dated March 19th stated no objections to the application as presented. They did also conduct a site visit, so we're aware of the additional shoreline structures that are located on this property. But again, as the proposed expansion is taking place on the structure that is essentially the farthest from the shore, they didn't have any concerns to this application as presented. They did note that there's no hazards, the natural hazards that will be impacted by the proposed development. If it were closer, any development within 15 meters of the high water mark would require RVCA permit approval. However, this garage structure is located outside that permit control area. As I noted, there's no septic performance review required as there's no increase in living space. However, the proximity to that setback system will require that there is some good confirmation during the building permit process to ensure that the proposed structure is not encroaching outside the requirements of the building code. There were no public comments received regarding this application, and planning staff are recommending, subject to any comments received at the meeting tonight, that the committee approve this application subject to the conditions listed in the planning report. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Next, we will ask the applicant, Mr. Knowles, if he would like a chance to speak. Okay, thank you. Committee members, do you have any questions at this time? Seeing none. Members of the public have an opportunity to speak. Chris, do you see anybody online that would like to speak?
Please use the raise hand feature. Nope, seeing none.
Okay. All right. And we'll move right to application 2026-0008, Kilpatrick Knowles. Moved by Bill Everett, seconded by Bill McDonald, that minor variance application APPN 2026-0008 Kilpatrick Knowles for part lot 19, concession 4, geographic township of Hinchinbrook, 1133 Simmons Lane, Township of Central Frontenac, be approved to demolish, reconstruct, and enlarge an existing legal, non-complying accessory storage structure. The enlarged structure will have an area of 84.8 square meters or 912 square feet and will have a minimum water body setback of 21.9 meters or 72 feet from the high water mark of Elbow Lake. And that the effect of the application is to grant permission to expand under Section 45(2) of the Planning Act, and further, that the Secretary Treasurer shall issue the notice of decision in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act, including providing the notice of decision to the applicant, any persons or public body that made a written request to be notified, and any other person or public body prescribed. All in favor? Carried. Next is application APPN 2026-0009 PLU. And I'll pass it over to Jenny to present the details.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is an application for minor variance to permit the development of an existing lot of record that is currently vacant, save and except for an outhouse. While on the air photo shown on the screen, there does appear to be 2 trailers. Those trailers were property of the prior owners and have since been removed. The current property owner, as I noted, has the only structure on the property being an outhouse that was there as part of this prior development where there were the RVs located on the property. So this proposal is looking at a multi-phase development of a dwelling with an area of 30 square meters or just under 1,000 square feet and a minimum water body setback of 15 meters to the high water mark of Fifth Depot Lake. Also proposed is a sleep cabin with an area of approximately 15 or maximum 15 square meters or 162 square feet. Again, minimum 15 meter setback to the high water mark. Also proposed is a class 2 septic system. So that's a gray water pit rather than a full class 4. And that's due to the soils and area available for that development on the property. So the applicants actually have been working for quite a while with Quinte Conservation Authority, the one that regulates this area. The Conservation Authority conducted their first site visit in October of 2024 to review proposals and examine options for this property. The property is a peninsula that extends into Fifth Depot Lake. It's approximately 68 meters at its very widest. However, where the peninsula comes out from the mainland is a large Conservation Authority regulated wetland. So the combination of the limited width, the identification of some steeper slopes along the shoreline by the Conservation Authority, along with the 30-meter setback required from the regulated wetlands, really limit the development potential for this property. And that's why the proposal is requesting a minimum 15-meter setback rather than a specific setback. The applicants have indicated they would be willing to do better if they could, but it's a very tight site, and even going out there, I believe undulating topography is probably the best accurate response or description of this property. So here on this next slide is the map that came from Quinte Conservation Authority. So you can see they've mapped the floodplain and high water marks with the green lines and the blue dashed lines, and then outlined the 15 meters minimum setback from the identified floodplain and high water mark, which is approximately the same given the layout of the property. So the shaded blue area in the middle is the area identified by the Conservation Authority as supportable for their permit purposes for development on this property. These you can see down here, we've got the dwelling in the yellow, the sleep cabin in the orange, and the gray water system in the red. Again, those are mostly approximate locations with the understanding that none of them can be any closer than 15 meters to the high water mark of the lake. But recognizing again, there is a little bit of flexibility, but not a whole lot based on the layout of the property. Let's let that switch. So here on this slide is an image you can see. So this is standing pretty much as far away from the point as the furthest structure. So that would be the sleep cabin. And the area that you can see in this image has some gravel fill imported and leveled. And this is the plateau area, approximately where the structures are proposed to be located. Again, and the applicants did work extensively with the Conservation Authority to identify this as the most suitable area, also probably the only flat area, resulting from some leveling on the property. And this next image here is standing kind of the opposite end. In the background of this, you can see is the county vehicle. So between there and where the photograph was taken, this is again just a slightly different view of. This is the most level spot on the whole property, and it gets more undulating and rocky from here. So as again, this was identified as probably the only building envelope, and there wasn't really any ability to meet that 30-meter setback anywhere on the property, especially when you combine with any slopes that are identified and the wetlands at the rear of the property. As I noted, Quinte Conservation did do a site visit in October 2024 and worked with the applicants from that point until this to try and get suitable locations for approval. Comments dated the 18th of March this year stated no objections to the application as submitted, with the plans shown earlier in the slides, and those are the layouts that came from the Conservation Authority themselves. They did note that there's slopes along the shoreline up to 10 meters in height, which go up from the high water mark to the plateau identified as the development envelope, and they were able to support a 15-meter or 49.2-foot minimum setback for all structures proposed on this property. The applicants are proposing a new Class 2 septic system with, again, that minimum 15-meter or 49.2 water body setback. And there's email correspondence working with the Township Building Department to help confirm suitable location and soil suitability. Again, final details on this will be confirmed at the building permit stage and with a qualified septic installer. Just to confirm the actual location again with that minimum 15-meter setback being respected. The applicants also noted that the existing outhouse on the property is outside that 15-meter setback, closer to the water, and will be removed as part or prior to any development located on this property. There were no public comments received regarding this application, and planning staff are recommending that the committee approve the application for all three structures as submitted, subject to any comments received at the meeting tonight, and with the conditions listed in the planning report. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Is the applicant or their agent, they have an opportunity to speak now? Chris, is there anybody online?
We do have Mr. Plew. Okay. Your mic is unmuted.
Just wanted to say thank you for the application, or for hearing our application, and thanks to Jenny for her presentation. We'll work as best as we can, well, completely in compliance with the municipality's guidelines, and we thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. Okay, committee members, do you have any questions at this time? Seeing none, Are there any members of the public that would like an opportunity to ask questions or comments? Chris? Seeing none. Okay, I will now read the application. Moved by Susan Irwin, seconded by Dan Meeks, that minor variance application APPN 2026-0009, Plu for part lots 16 and 17, concession 12, geographic township of Hinchinbrook, Fifth Lake Road, Township of Central Frontenac, be approved to permit the construction of a new dwelling with a footprint of 30 square meters or 984 square feet, and a minimum water body setback of 15 meters or 49.2 feet from the high water mark of Fifth Depot Lake. A sleep cabin with a footprint of 15 square meters or 162 square feet, and a minimum water body setback of 15 meters or 49.2 feet from the high water mark of Fifth Depot Lake, and a Class 2 sewage system gray water pit to be located a minimum of 15 meters or 49.2 feet from the high water mark of Fifth Depot Lake. And that the effect of the application is to grant a variance from section 5.6.2 and 4.26.5A of the zoning bylaw 2011-52 as amended. And further, that the Secretary Treasurer shall issue the notice of decision in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act, including providing the notice of decision to the applicant, any person or public body that has made a written request to be notified, and any other person or public body prescribed. All in favor? Carried. Other business. Abby, is there any other business?
No, there is not.
Adjournment. Moved by Bill McDonald and seconded by Nikki Gowdy that this meeting be adjourned until July 14th, 2026 at 5 p.m. virtually and in person at the council chambers located at 14216 Road 38, Sharbot Lake, or at the call of the chair. All in favor?
Again, Madam Chair.
The date is July 14th at 5 p.m. Carried. And it is 5:37.